What's up, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. This is one of Samsung's best devices of all time, and it's a pretty interesting time because it is a phone that has the headphone jack, the SD card support. It just had everything you could really want. And then, after this phone with the S20, Samsung slowly starts to take, features away, like the headphone jack, SD card support, which a lot of people do actually like still to this day. A lot of people really like phones with SD cards and headphone jacks. Alright, so let's go ahead and just jump in here. So we don't talk about this phone a lot. I haven't talked about this phone in like a year. And again, it's just like, the S10e as far as it just being an older device and it's not getting any more updates. So let's go ahead and check it out and see how this phone is holding up in 2024. I want to talk about the display on the S10 Plus. So Samsung does have a 6.4 inch display. It's dynamic AMOLED HDR10 Plus. It's a full 1440p panel, 522 for the PPI. Extremely sharp panel, and you can see it has the double punch hole up top here, which is pretty interesting because, Apple kind of has that design now with their iPhones. It kind of goes to show how the iPhone's displays have always been a little bit dated. But the display on here is still pretty nice. It's a curved display. You guys can see got a little bit damaged down here. But yeah, so the display itself is still really beautiful, guys. The colors and everything just really pop, and it's super sharp panel, guys. Like I said, 522 for the PPI at 1440p at this size of a display at 6.4 inches. And that's pretty interesting because this is a plus size phone. But it's actually more of a normal size phone these days, considering that a plus size phone would typically be around 6.7 to 6.8 inches. So it's actually kind of small for 2024. But nonetheless, this is still a beautiful looking panel. It's kind of somewhat bright outdoors as well too. It's not the brightest. We know displays have gotten much more brighter these days. But yeah, the display itself is still really good. It can go up with the best of them. Yeah, so no issues here. I think, like I said, the only thing that's dated with the display, honestly, is that it doesn't have any type of 90 hertz or 120 hertz. It's just a 60 hertz panel. Now, it is a very smooth 60 hertz panel. But yeah, so you guys can see it's still a very nice looking display. Now, I do want to talk about gaming performance on here, and it's still really great. It has the Snapdragon 855 chipset on here. You can see we're still able to play PUBG at HDR Extreme. We can even go up to the Ultra HD, but it's still a really excellent gamer. And like I said, you do have that expandable storage on here, and then you also have the 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on the base model. Just hopping in here and playing PUBG, the phone still runs really well, and I don't have any heating issues with the chipset on here. And I know a lot of people, from overseas might have the Exynos version. Unfortunately, I can't get my hands on those. But yeah, the Snapdragon version is really good, guys. Like I said, this phone still will outdo any most mid-range phones. For the most part, like let's say for instance a Galaxy A32 that we talked about, you get for $200. It's still faster than these phones, and when it comes to gaming performance. So these, like I always say, old flagships are really good for gaming on a budget. You get some really good performance here. Now, this phone's last software update was actually the Android 12 update, and then it didn't get any more. It was getting security patches, but now this phone has not gotten any more security patches. It's pretty much a dead phone as far as software goes. But yeah, as you guys can see, performance on here, you easily could still play games on here just fine. And like I said, really no heating issues at all. It's actually very impressive still for 2024. One thing about this phone in particular is the design. I think the design still looks really good. I'm really surprised at how well this phone has aged design-wise. I think this actually looks better than the S20 series. I still think it has a more modern look to me, in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Yeah, I really love this color on here too. Even though it's a glossy back and you don't really see fingerprints on here, I feel like if you're going to do a glossy back, then definitely make it like this, where you really have to like put it at an angle. And even at an angle, you can't really see the fingerprints. Like, it has to be at a really specific angle to be able to see it, like right there. Just a beautiful design, really glossy back, gives it that nice classy look to it. And then, full glass metal phone. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. We got the headphone jack. We got the SD card support. It's fairly thin phone as well too, and actually pretty light. Like I said, remember, this is a plus size phone, and you know, it's actually kind of small these days. We got the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner up front that still works really well, and then you can also use face unlock. But yeah, the design on here I think still looks really, really great. Check out these stereo speakers. The speakers actually still sound pretty good amount of bass, and they sound pretty loud. Even the top speaker, when you cover the bottom speaker, you still get a decent amount of sound out of here. Alright guys, and looking at the cameras on the S10, they pretty much still look like the S10e for the most part. You still get really good shots. Like I said, the only thing with this phone, as usual with these older flagships, is that you can get a little bit of a softer image. I could definitely see it now, especially looking at like newer phones for sure. The images can be a little bit softer if you're not in like the best lighting condition. But if you're in good lighting condition, you can get a pretty sharp image. Like I said, I compared the S10 to the S23 Ultra, and I thought it still took some pretty good shots. I'll try to put like a comparison up for you guys so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But even compared to the new phones, this still does a pretty good job for the most part. Pretty good color, pretty good dynamic range. Yeah, the video is still pretty solid, so it doesn't take bad pictures at all, but it's definitely not, it's not on par with newer phones or even some newer mid-range phones. I could definitely see, I think the A54 I think did a better job in some of these scenarios as well. But yeah, still takes good photos, just can be a little bit soft if you're not in good lighting. Now the battery situation on this phone is still pretty decent. Again, I haven't replaced any of the batteries in my older flagships. This phone typically can get around 5 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time. Last time I did a battery drain test, it got almost close to 6, but you could expect somewhere around 5 hours, so it's not terrible, but you know, it's not technically a full day anymore. And I think when the phone was new, it could do 6 hours pretty easily. So it has a 4100 milliamp hour battery. You also have somewhat of a slow charging on this phone as well too. It's not super fast with the 15-watt wireless charging. And then you also have wireless and reverse wireless charging as well too. It's a pretty decent phone, guys. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily buy this phone. Like I said, if you have anywhere around 200 bucks or something like that, I would go for like a Galaxy S21, S21 FE, even an S20 if you want that SD card support. But yeah, the only reason that I could justify even trying to pick this up as like a secondary phone is probably because of the headphone jack, if that's something you really, really need. But like I said, there are better options even from Samsung, just depending on what you're looking for. But very impressive phone. I still think one of Samsung's best phones of all time, up there with the Note 10 Plus. Just a very fully feature packed phone still. So what do you guys think? And I'll catch you guys in the next one.